Hey, good morning. Ben here with Studio on the Lake. This is the year in review. All the carvings that were done in the last year. This is what the lake looks like right now on December 15th. It's all froze over. We've got about 3 feet of snow outside. Here's a little squirrel sitting up in a tree. You can barely see him up there. He's just not moving. I assume he's been down to the feeder. So this is a quick rundown of all the videos that were put up in the last year. Thank everyone who subscribed, and thanks to those folks that watched them. And no better place to start than a little tour of where I carve out in the studio. Got a pot-bellied stove out there, got a chair. You got my little workstation set up on the right there. And then later on you'll see there's a TV up in the corner. And it's a great place to spend the morning, especially when the snow is doing what it's doing. Unfortunately, you'll see that loon on the trash can. He's been there all year. I haven't done any more work on him. And there's a good view of the table lamp. It's about 2.5, 3 foot square with a lamp up on top of it. It used to be in the house many years ago, and since been retired out to the studio. There's a power carving station. And there's the view that I got from my chair with the TV up in the corner. There's a stump where most of the stuff takes place. My daughter points out that the red magic marker on there looks a lot like blood and probably has no place in a wood carving video. But as I've said before, it's really not blood, and I very rarely cut myself. No better place to start than wood. One video talks about different types of wood. This is a piece of basswood that was a reject. Here's how it starts out. 3 or 4 years ago, I cut several pieces, and then a couple of years ago, more pieces. I collect basswood trees from people's yards once they come down, and if they put them on Craigslist, I'll go out there and cut them up, split them relatively into a loon, piece big enough to do one of the big loons that I do, and then it sits out there in the shed for 2-3 years. I take it and put it up in the top of the studio. So this is just a little short excerpt. All of these are little excerpts of the various videos you can go look at. That's showing different types of wood that we're carving. The basswood starting on that there. 2x4, which you probably don't want to carve. And then here's some coco bolo for weird wood that's hard. Several series on beginning tools. This is a little excerpt of the knife video. That's a Ramelson knife in my hand there. That's currently my favorite knife that I use. And they're called bench knives. They look like this. The one in the middle is homemade knife. Another homemade knife. And those are chip carving knives, also from Ramelson. Just a quick one over the world. There's a beginner set. There's a whole series in there, probably 10 videos on tools and beginner tools and what you need and all that sort of good stuff. That's what I'd recommend, that little set of 6. A carving knife and a rubber mallet, and you're off and going. That's a good starter set right there. There is a whole video on that. That's a high dollar chisel. You pay $40 or $50 for that particular chisel by itself, and probably the same amount of money for those tools that are laying there. I use rubber hammer mallets. I don't like to tear up the handles on the tools. But when you're putting your kit together, you'll need something to sharpen. That is also in the video. There's a diamond strop, well abused. Add to it a leather strop, again, well abused, with some kind of compound on it to do your sharpening. You need a good saw. That's a little German jeweler saw. Again, used and abused. Draw knife, never hurt anyone. And a good hatchet or axe if you want to remove some wood pretty quick. Hey, the best place to start is a kid's sword or something for a kid. Kids love wooden swords. You can make them pretty simple and pretty quick. These were made for the grandkids, and this one's been used and abused. Whole video on that. And if you got a sword, you need a Thor's hammer. So here's the Thor's hammer, the original one. It does a really nice job of smashing nuts and various different things like that if you need them. Kind of like Gallagher used to in the old days with watermelons. We didn't try a watermelon, but I think it'd probably do a good job. If you've made the one Thor's hammer, you probably ought to make the other one. And here's the other one. I think this one's called Mjolnir, and I'll probably mispronounce that. But it came off, didn't have a handle. That's a handle that Groot from the Marvel series donated to that. And there's a long video on that. This one it turned out quite light actually for the amount of it. It's in basswood, as is most of the stuff here. If I remember or notice, I'll make a note when it's not basswood that I'm carving. But the grandson smashed this one around quite a bit. It's still going strong, although the chopping blade on it is a little more damaged from smashing into the ground. And he's not allowed to hit trees or animals and that sort of stuff. But it's light enough that a 5-year-old can wield it and do some pretty good damage. They were fun to make. There's a series in the middle of several videos on making tools. This is a knife video, quenching it. Unfortunately, I don't use this knife very much because I've never taken the time to complete the finish on the blade. It's sharp, but not sharp enough, and I need to spend a little more time. It's checking the hardness on it. That's the whole knife. Someday I'll break a knife or something and decide to go ahead and sharpen that all the way. Series in the middle on the beginner portion on power carving. That's the power carvers that I use, the Ultima by PJL Enterprises out of Minnesota. That series goes through and talks about the different bits, diamond bits, cuts all bits, green, yellow, red. I talk about those in detail. Give you a one over the world. And there's a cuts all diamond. We're back to kid stuff. Another grandkid made maracas just for the heck of it because I was bored. And they were fun. They've got, I think, a couple pennies inside there, a couple ball bearings. And being a year old, he played with them briefly for a day or two, and now they lay around in the toy box. Here's a Cusca drinking cup. I will probably make more of these. This was kind of fun to me. This is a little smaller one. Sits in your hand. A lot of people were doing Cusca, so I went ahead and did one. This seems to be the most popular stuff. These are the wood spirits. This is one made out of a chunk of wood that I found out on a property or out at the woodlot. And he's just a standalone, hang on the wall. Later on, you'll see a birdhouse, which turns out to be the most popular video in the last year. This one's getting a little coat of sealer on it. Here's a small wood spirit. This one's made from a piece of firewood that I was getting ready to throw in the fire, and it had a interesting shape about it and was kind of a tear out on the knot there, and it looked like would make a good wood spirit. So there's the start of it. That's how it looks like before you rescue it from going in the fire, and that's how it looks like at the end when you're done with that. If you don't like how these things turn out, you can still throw it in the fire. There's the lake front property in the spring, and there's the most popular video on the channel right now. That's the Spirit Birdhouse. It's made out of scrap wood that's been laying outside, carved down, turned into a birdhouse. And I had meant this morning to go out and take a picture of him all snow covered, hanging on the tree, but I didn't get there, so there's a picture of it where it's stuck out on the tree, aging. Here's a fun one that didn't do quite as well as I thought it might. That's the exploding box. Got a rat trap in the middle, sides are just stuck in there. It's a gag deal. You set the mouse trap, the box will blow up all of its own. Put something on the top like coffee donations or something like that, take it to work. Probably don't want to use a rat trap. That one's pretty powerful. And it just loosely fits in there. It's, like I said, one of my favorites, but really kind of worthless. That's what it does. Blows up. Big money. Made from basswood scraps. You can probably hear a dog snoring in the background. It's good that they're able to rest. That was in the middle of the winter. Just a shot I thought I'd throw in there. That's when the deer were coming in and cleaning out the bird feeder every night. And just because it says thanks for watching, we're not done yet. We got about 5 more minutes of the video here. Here's the last project that was done here last week. That's the Drake blue-winged teal and the hen. Those were commissioned pieces that were shipped off a week ago. Destined to be somebody's Christmas present, I suspect. Here's a baby bird, also one of the more popular videos. These I used to carve all the time. I don't do as many as I used to, but they're a lot of fun. They just sit in your hand, and if you turn them to the right light or carve them well enough, they look kind of real, sitting there. But they're a lot of fun to do, and they only take 2-3 hours to do. You can find the video on how these feathers are all done, and this one happened to be an eagle feather that was found laying in the yard, and there's the carving representation of that. A little bit larger than the actual feather, but not much. If you watch that series, it'll teach you how I do the feathers on the ducks and that sort of thing. Speaking of ducks, there's a green-winged teal hen in the background. There's a dragon door knocker. There's a whole series with a bunch of dragons in there. They also seem to be quite popular. That was supposed to go on the door of the shop. Sliding door. The handle broke last winter when the ice froze the door. And all year I've been ignoring it and reaching up high. And I thought I'd build a handle for it. He was done, completed, put on the door, and my wife actually liked it. So it came off the door, and now it's sitting over in the corner. She's trying to figure out what to do with it. And that's where it was intended to go, and that's where it was, and now it's not there anymore. And we're back to where we started. Got no handle on the door. Here's a wizard. Just a whimsical something in the middle. Sometimes I get a wild idea and just want to carve something strange. This guy turned out to be strange. Here's a old school. Carvers out east used to do the eagle heads. That's what this one is. I kind of ripped off a design that my father-in-law ripped off from someone else. So that one's been ripped off several times. There's a spoon carving demonstration. A little coffee spoon. Here's another dragon. This, unfortunately, I did two of these. He's still laying out there. Pretty close to that shape right there. I'll do the third series and finish him at some point in the future. Sticking with the dragon theme, with a little bit of stuff in the middle, here's a hummingbird getting placed in a flower. I was originally going to put this together this way. Excuse me. And there's the dragon that would go with that, and it got warped out and turned into something else that ended up being part of this right here, which is a lamp. There's videos of the little gnomes that are on there, the video of the dragon in the corner, and a video of putting the lamp together. So this is a little gnome house. Dragons landed on top of it. The gnomes are sitting there. They're just stuck into a nail where they can pivot around. You can change. There you go. You see them pivoted around. You see a little bit of painting on those. I very rarely paint stuff. Not that I don't like to paint. It's just that I don't do it. Several little birds. These are this whole thing was a collection of stuff that when you saw the workbench there earlier, it had a bunch of carvings laying around on it and they didn't have any use. There's a good carving of this little gnome here. He's done in a hardwood. There's a series I started late in the summer. This is my sawmill out at the woodlot. Getting put together. It did get a pad poured, moved over, the section stuck together, rewired. There's 2 or 3 videos on that. And you got it up to the point where it's starting to run. And its job is to build its own sawmill shed, which will be a future video. There's a video of the first initial run on the motor. It seems to be working fine. You didn't get a video of that, but that's what the winter looks like around here now. There's a new bird feeder. I probably should have filmed doing that, and I didn't. Here's that squirrel sitting in the tree in the middle to show you how cold it is. He's not moving at all. That's the little woodshed where I dry. It's completely filled with basswood. You can see how that's a standard size building, and the snow is about 8 feet up to the top of that, and about 3 or 4 feet in the middle here. Here's the last carving. That's the drake that was completed last week, and I'm planning right now probably to do the big loon. We'll see. So there's a quick overview. There's probably 50 videos on the channel. Subscribe, share, and like. Quite a few people have subscribed. We're almost at 200, which I think is pretty good. And thanks for a great year. We'll see you next year. And by all means, share, like, subscribe, comment.